Alrighty, what is quacking, everybody? So, the Nintendo Virtual Console. Nintendo Virtual Console has been around for quite a while now, starting on the Wii U era, or not the Wii U era, the Wii era. It started on the Wii era, and it just allowed us to buy classical games on the Wii, where we could just, be like, oh, look at that. Oh, I remember playing that on the N64. Let me buy that. My N64 broke, or something along those lines. And it was very nice to just be able to buy those games off the store, and they kept this type of virtual console trend up until the Switch era, which we then ended up, getting the virtual console subscription model with your paid Nintendo Switch Online. But you had the 3DS also had virtual console games, and the Wii U had virtual console games, and I remember buying the Wii U virtual console games because it was a lot cheaper to buy the older Mario parties and Mario Kart and have a game session with the friends than it was to just buy like some brand new game. So like I got like multiple games for the price of like a new game, which was pretty good. It was like cheap, and then these old classic games, granted they were a little bit clunky, but hey, you save money where you save money. But once the Switch came out, we had the paid subscription Nintendo Switch Online virtual consoles, which was very nice from a convenience sake, but because of the cloud service and the quality of emulation, it really wasn't all that. So because of that, the Nintendo Switch Online virtual console is kind of terrible because you have to have an internet connection. You can't play any other way. With the old virtual consoles, you could. If you buy them, you can play them without an internet connection, easy, free. But with the virtual consoles, you have to actually, have a internet connection, and then depending on the strength of your connection is going to depend on how much fun you have playing the game, because there is input delay, which is very unfortunate. And the only plus side currently is like the rewind feature, which is cool, I guess. But let's say you're like a person who, doesn't want to use that feature because you're like, it's cheating. I wanna play how they used to play back in the 80s and 90s. Then you're probably not gonna use that feature. And when you get screwed over by the input delay, it's gonna not feel so good. You're gonna have a very bad time. And I know a lot of people have said, that it is nice that it's a convenience sake, but the input delay can sometimes be very, very obnoxious. But like I said, there is pros and cons to this type of system. Being able to play these old games, great, fantastic. It's nice that, hey, look, I can go play the old Zeldas and play the new Zeldas at the same time. Which, it is cool, and still kind of a missed opportunity from Nintendo not putting the HD Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Switch, because that would allow us to play all 3D Zelda games on the Switch. But besides that point, it's just very nice being able to play these old games, and the convenience of these, and the fact that, it just does come with your monthly subscription. So that's cool, I guess. Like, you're not really paying for it, it's just a nice added bonus. But on the other hand, it's like if you are interested in some of these games, then the input delay and the cloud service and having to have an internet connection does suck. And on top of that, they drip feed us these games on virtual consoles, which sucks. It sucks having to sit there and wait for these, drip fed games. And then some of the games that are given to us are just like fluff games. Like, I don't want to play half the games on these libraries. Just give me the heavy hitters. Give me the bangers, please. Not to mention the fact that the Virtual Console did take a while to take off because of this drip feeding method. Like, if I like the $50 one, I kind of was like, oh, so convenient. I can play the N64 on my Switch. But it's like I have to pay extra money for that, which I don't want to do. And then on top of that, I get to play a laggy input delayed game when I got everything on my on my PC already. Like, I have these games, and if I really wanted to actually like play the game, I got an N64 with Ocarina of Time. So I have multiple ways to play Ocarina of Time. And not to mention, if you have a Wii and you bought Ocarina of Time, go play it on your old Wii. And I think they even put it on the Wii U too, if I'm not mistaken. And what compiles with all this as well is that these yeah, this is just kind of like a generous service. It's cool or whatever. But some of the people who do want to play these games for the convenience sake, and who actually want to reminisce on these games, the only target audience of these games is the older demographic of people. I'm not seeing younger generations of people going, oh man, I can't wait to play golf on the NES Virtual Console. Like, you don't see that. So, and like even like the Mario games is just like, even like the really big heavy hitters, like some younger people will probably go back and play them because, you know, maybe they're like retro, maybe they're interested. I know that's kind of like a gateway from like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom back to like older games. But even then, the Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom gateway just takes people back to, oh, well, Skyward Sword's on the Switch, I'm gonna go play that. Or, oh, I have a Wii U collecting dust, let me get HD Wind Waker or HD Twilight Princess. Like, that's as far back as people are going. Or maybe they have the 3DS. And I will say the 3DS controls for Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time are pretty decent, I guess. I wish they would port those to the Switch as well, because honestly, the gyro aim on the 3DS when you're laying in bed really sucks. So besides that, it's just like the bridge to play these older like classical games with the classical feel really isn't, you know, worth it, and not a lot of people are interested besides people who, again, like these games, grew up with these games like me. I could, however, be wrong, though. There could be some data to show that, you know, hey, maybe a lot of people do actually play these things, because it does come with your Nintendo Switch Online. So there could be people who are just like, oh, I'm bored and tired of getting clapped in my Splatoon or Smash Ultimate matches. Let me just load up, you know, some Nintendo Switch Online and play some really old games. But I just feel like the general consensus is like, it's just a lot of like older people who are like, oh, look at my childhood, this is so great. And then they go, wow, this sucks. I'm so glad I have a rewind feature. Now, like I said earlier, like another way to play these games is like, you know, I don't condone piracy or anything, but, you know, you do you. But, you know, you shouldn't pirate and, you know, emulate if you only own the game, because that's the legal way to do it. So that's like kind of the biggest way to play these games. And then on top of that, like some games that we want aren't on there, like Pokemon. They have the Game Boy emulators, but Pokemon's not on there, so people are just gonna go back and play their old Pokemon games. And that was kind of like a fun thing that Nintendo did on the 3DS, is they had the Pokemon Bank, and then they gave us the classic Pokemon Virtual Consoles, but we could play those games and take our Pokemon from those games and move them to the newer games. So I figure that's kind of like a missed opportunity in a way, where it's just like, you know, hey, you buy the Nintendo Virtual Console, not only do you get to bring, you know, red, blue, gold, silver, crystal over, but we have the Game Boy Advance. So how about ruby, emerald, sapphire, huh? How about that fire red, leaf green? So overall, it does suck that we don't even have the option, and Pokemon Home's on the Switch as well. So it's just like something like that, where it's just like, it just feels like the Virtual Console is just kind of like there, which is fine. It is fine that it's just there, but I want something more from it. Like, if I'm going to get a service or product for free, or maybe I want to get it for the convenience to play some of these old games, I do kind of expect it to be a little bit better. Especially because some of the emulation, Nintendo's competing with like people who have poured their heart and souls into emulation projects. And then I can't even imagine if they release like a GameCube emulator and that's worse than Dolphin. Like, Dolphin is like the peak standard of GameCube and Wii emulation. And if Nintendo can't hit that mark, then that says a lot. Like, I think that kind of shows how much they really care about some of this stuff. Again, it's just probably fluffware that they just want to give us something as compensation for also having Nintendo Switch Online. But I really think they're probably doing their older games a disservice as well, and just kind of like holding up a service that really shouldn't be held up, if that makes sense. Like, it's just going to deteriorate over time if they're upholding like a service that is just like not the greatest and then no one's using it. So like, if their service is having low numbers, then it's like, why do you keep producing games and putting games on there, and you're doing some of these older games a disservice, which is unfortunate. Not to mention the fact that some of these, like the N64 for example, like that's an extra $30 because I pay for the $20 one, so I get a couple, you know, emulations here and there from the NES, SNES, and Game Boy, just the regular Game Boy. But it's like $50 for the N64 and Game Boy Advance and the Sega one. And it's just like, again, I have multiple ways to play these games. Why am I going to pay an extra $30 to play them in an unoptimal way? That's going to be probably tedious and annoying if I'm having input delays. And also, like, what if I'm in the middle of like a save and then, you know, maybe I have internet maintenance. Maybe I'm going on a trip and I just want to play that game that I'm playing. Well, I can't because it's a cloud service. So that's like one of the biggest issues there, is like it's like, you know, costs money, and then it's not, you know, the most optimal or most fun way to play. And on top of that, if you're like me and you have like some emulation, well, now I can randomize these games and add more fun to these games. I'm not saying like I need randomizers on my virtual console, but I'm just saying like my options are better than just the extra $30 for convenience on an N64 or Game Boy Advance emulator. And this leads us into like, so we're getting the new console, right? Like we're getting a new console next year, and it's like, well, what's Nintendo gonna do with the virtual console? They're probably gonna just keep it the same. I don't think that's ever gonna change, unfortunately, which does suck. But if they're not gonna change it, then it's just like gonna be another thing that people may or may not download on their Switch. And like, God forbid, like the worst part is just like if they do virtual console the same way, but then they just drip feed us the same games. Like, oh, we fixed emulation, guys, but we're slowly rolling out the games again. It's like, no, don't do that. You already have all the games on Switch, which is unfortunate. So honestly, like, I definitely feel like they could do a lot better with this. And like I said, I don't have the data, I don't know, but it just seems like this whole thing has just been generally aimed at people who just want the convenience to play some older games. And just like, let's say like a parents who, have a family plan, and it's just like, oh, well, my kid's off playing like, Pokemon Unite and Splatoon and Pokemon and, Smash. Oh, well, I have this family plan, and I remember that from my childhood. So it's like, it's stuff like that where it's aimed at like older adults on a family plan and just like people who want a very convenient way to play these older games. So it would honestly just be nice to have, just the download local way to play them. What they could do to probably improve this is like actually allow us to download very specific games. Maybe it's like a one at a time thing to download these games locally onto our Switches. So that way, like, there's no input delay. We don't have to worry about cloud service, and we just have it there on our Switch. I think that'd be a nice new feature that they could add, which would be fantastic. So there's that. Or they could do another way where instead of just giving us these games that are like, fluffware and just random games, just give us the heavy hitters. Like, honestly, there's like games they put on there that I don't even like care for. Like, there's golf on the NES. Who, again, I said it earlier, but who's playing golf? Who is it? Who's the one person who's playing golf? Who gave it to their grandpa? Who's like, Grandpa, do you remember this game? And they're like, I remember golf from the NES. Where do I blow the cartridge to make it work? Like, oh no, Grandpa, it's online. And Grandpa's like, whoa. Or like, there's some like other games like Claymates on the Super. What's Claymates? I've never heard of that before. Or Winback on the N64. What's Winback? You have all these games. What are these games? Like, we don't need these games. Just give us ways to play these older games. Bundle them. Do what you did with 3D All-Stars and, like, sell them to us in, like, cheaper bundles on, the store. Like, give us, like, an online store. Here's cheaper bundle. Boom. Done. But they're probably not going to do that. Even if they give us, I'm the last person who wants FOMO. But, like, if they did, like, some FOMO thing where, like, oh, you want physical? Buy all 3 Donkey Kong Countries right here, physical, on a Switch cartridge. Like, that'd be crazy to have that. But they're probably not going to do that. I'm not going to do any of that. And they're probably just going to, keep up what they're doing instead and just keep pumping out these games. It's a very tricky business decision as well, is the issue too. Because, like, we can sit here and complain about all these things, but at the end of the day, this is just free software. Well, technically semi-free. Like, it comes with the Nintendo Switch Online. Like, it's not technically free, but it's complimentary software that comes with our Nintendo Switch Online, which is grateful. I am grateful that I do get to play some of these games and like kind of have that, because I don't have a Super Nintendo anymore or an NES anymore. So it just kind of comes down to like a logistic issue for Nintendo. As grateful as I am for being able to play these games, it's just like, is it worth it to up the scale of our Nintendo Switch Online services with the Virtual Console? Like, is there a reason for us to put more resources into making these things, really good? Or because it's complimentary software that we just kind of go, up, you get what you get, here you go. Because, like, again, it's like a business thing where it's just like, okay, logistically, if they take the complimentary virtual software off and they just keep reselling us Mario 64 every single console, here you go. Like, that's one thing, but like giving us a subscription model, just like, well, here's a bunch of games all at once, is another thing. it does have its pros and cons for sure, but there are some issues with the Virtual Console, and also the fact that, you know, Nintendo really does hard hit emulation, and they're really not very fond of emulation, as we've seen with a lot of takedowns and all these other things, and they're not fond of people modding their games either. So that's like kind of the issue with the Virtual Console, is overall like, hey, Nintendo, give us your old games to play properly and really well, and I will love you because I love these games. Give us the things that we need to play your amazing games. And I think that's what does hurt the most at the end of the day, is like, oh, Nintendo makes these fantastic games, but they make it really hard for game preservation people. They make it hard to, you know, really enjoy mods. Like, you know, Point Crow had like a Tears of the Kingdom multiplayer mod he was making. He got DMCA'd by Nintendo. So all these different things that, you know, Nintendo has with like their older games, their older IPs, they're so protective of these older IPs. I think there was like a Mario 64 HD remake that got shut down as well, which like looked really nice, but they're like, nope, gone, bye. So that's kind of the issue, and it'd just be nice if, you know, Nintendo, when they're giving us these older games, they just kind of go, bam, we're like showing our love with these older games. Here you go, guys. And I think that's kind of what I really want. Mostly, I think that's kind of like the outcome of this video, is like the thing I want to say is I just really want older Nintendo games to be more accessible and better to play than just on a input delay, sometimes like just weird cloud service, instead of just being able to play it properly and download it on my console. But that's me in the Virtual Console. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know what games you're playing on the Virtual Console. I've been playing like random stuff on the Virtual Console. It's been kind of fun. But I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace.